Hello, Mark from Enchantment of Eternity here. So I'm here to do some more Star Trek episode polls. What? What are you talking about, Mark? You told me specifically that you were not going to do any more Star Trek polls. Well, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, I lied. Well, no, actually, that's not true. I actually, in the words of Armis, wait, I changed my mind. Sorry for those horrible quotes. But no, I had decided to actually go back and do some more Star Trek episode polls. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about. So way back when, back in the day, I would review episodes of Star Trek on my channel, and in order to determine which episodes of Star Trek I would review, I would do these polls, where I'd make a video like this. I go to the random episode generator and randomly generate 5 episodes from each of the 5 Star Trek series. Then I'd make a poll with those episodes for each of the 5 Star Trek series and put them up for all my users to vote on, and whichever episode won the poll is the episode I would review. Now, I ceased and desist doing that a bit over a year ago in favor of reviewing every single episode of Star Trek in order, skipping over the ones that I've already covered. And so I have done that. I did all of the original series, the animated series, the movies, and now I'm up to Next Generation in the middle of Season 3 of Next Generation. But you know what? I kind of thought about it, and I was like, let's do a poll. Let's just do some random polls. And I decided I'm going to do this rare occasions. Probably 2 more times in the midst of covering every episode of Star Trek, where I'll take, a wee little break and do 1 episode from each of the 5 series, and then I'll go back. It's not like I'm going to stop covering, just to be clear, I'm not going to stop covering every episode of Star Trek in order. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm just taking a little break. Going to do 5 episodes, 1 from each series, and then I'll go back. Once those 5 are done, I'll go back to going in order. I resume my order of doing, that. But I just want to take a break, cover some of the other Star Trek series, because I've been going in order, for so long. It would be being in context, and it makes a difference if I go out of context sometimes. And I just thought it would be a little break. So, to be clear, I am making this video a month in advance. I won't be releasing these reviews that we're about to poll for another month. So once I'm finished covering Season 3 of Next Generation, so this will be a little pause in between my coverage of Season 3 and Season 4. And then once I finish doing these reviews, I'll go back to covering Season 4 of Next Gen. So, a few things I need to touch on is, for one thing, I said all 5 Star Trek series, and if you may recall, I have already covered every single episode of the original series, so you might be like, well, what are you talking about? You already reviewed every episode of the original series. Well, I do these things called revisiteds. I've been doing so as I go through every episode of Star Trek. If I reach an episode that I had already covered, I do a revisited video, usually just on my Patreon, just for my Patreon supporters. So those who support me on Patreon can watch me cover once again an episode I already covered, but sort of maybe talk about some things I forgot to mention or didn't have time to mention, or maybe make some commentary on what I said. Maybe, like Armrest said, maybe I changed my mind on some of the things I said, sort of to just revisit my review that I already made. So that's what I'm talking about doing with the original series. So I'm going to make a poll, going to randomly select 5 episodes from the original series, and in which case the winner of the poll I will do a revisited for. So I'll revisit my review. Now, if it is an episode I already did a revisited for, I'm not going to record another revisited for. I'm going to take the revisit I already made and make it public. So that Revisited was just there for the Patreon supporters. If that wins the poll, I'm going to make it public and put it on my YouTube channel for everyone to see, rather than just my Patreon supporters. Now, if the episode is one that I haven't done a Revisited for yet, then I will record a fresh Revisited for that, and again, make it public. Put it on publicly on my YouTube channel for everyone to see again. So this is for the original series poll is for Revisited, but one that will be made public rather than just for my Patreon supporters. Now, for next gen, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do Revisited because I'm only, as I say, by the time I make these polls, I will be 3 seasons in. So what I'm going to do instead is limit the selections of next gen to seasons 4 through 7. And even then, I'm going to exclude the episodes I've already covered. So I won't be doing Revisit. I'll be doing fresh reviews, but your options will be limited. It will be just from season 4 to 7. And when I record my randomizing, selecting, usually if I come across an episode I already selected, I'll be like, oh, I'll skip this episode. But I'm going to edit all that out because I'm probably going to hit a lot of episodes that I already covered, seeing as I will be essentially halfway through the show. And then when we get to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, it will proceed as normal. Do the polls the way I've always done in the past. That is, any episode I have yet to cover will be eligible. So for as far as the original series go, every episode will be eligible except for one. The only episode that's not eligible will be City on the Edge of Forever, because I already did a Revisited for that is public on my channel. So there already is a public Revisited on my YouTube channel for that, so there's no reason to do that one again. Cool? Cool. Okay, so let's do it. Let's go to the random episode generator and select which episodes will be in these polls. Alright, so we go to the random episode generator, and we'll start with Star Trek, the original series, and the first option is The Man Trap, the first episode to air, but not what I would call the first episode. I've yet to do a Revisited for this, so in this case I will record a brand spanking new Revisited and release that on my channel. So that's your first option. Next option is the Copenhagen Maneuver, which I have done a Revisited for. This is the real second episode of the show because it was the second episode produced, or the first episode produced after or maybe the third episode produced if you count the Cage, and then No Man Has Come Before, but it's the first episode produced for the show after it had been picked up. Anyway, yes, I had already did a review and a Revisited for this, so if you vote for this episode, I will simply make my existing Revisited public for all those to see. Next, Bread and Circuses, the stupid Other Worlds episode where they go to Earth and it's just like Rome in the 20th century. I said the word stupid, so you probably know how I feel about this episode. I've not done a Revisited for this, so I will be, if you select this one, I will be doing a new Revisited for this episode. Alright, so next option is Turnabout and Intruder, what I call the singular worst episode of the original series, and I stand by this, and I also call it the most sexist episode in the Star Trek franchise. Yes, I have already done a Revisited for this episode, so if you do select this episode, I will simply make the Revisited I did for this one public. Oh, and by the way, is the last episode made and to air for the original series, but that's, I think, very incidental. I barely even talk about that. Anyway, final option. Let's get to the final option for the original series. And that's Spock's Brain! You gotta say, every time I say Spock's Brain, I have to say it like that. Spock's Brain! What most people would call the worst episode of the original series, but I just think it's okay. I think it's just kind of childish and silly, and I think if you remove one plot element, it's actually not that bad of an episode. So, this would be yet another case where I did already do a revisited for this episode, so if you select this episode, I will simply make the revisited that I already did public for all to see. So, them's the breaks. Them's the original series. So now we go over to Next Gen. So the first option is Times Arrow, and believe it or not, I have yet to do Times Arrow. So this is two. I will do both parts in one review. The ends season 5 and begins season 6, where they travel back and see Mark Twain. I say. Anyway, next option is going to be Force of Nature, which I don't believe I covered. I actually think I like this episode better than most, as I like season 7 better than most. It's the global warming analogy episode where they put a speed limit at the end of the episode, saying no ships can go more than Warp 5, which lasts for like 2 episodes before they ignore it. But still a good episode. So, next option. Next option is Cause and Effect, and I don't believe I covered this episode yet, which is quite surprising because it's a very, very popular episode. I don't like it as much as a lot of other people do, but I still think it's a good episode, don't get me wrong. I still like it, just don't think it's one of the best. I would never put it in a top 10 as many others would. But yeah, it's the original time loop episode that came out even before Groundhog Day. So next episode is The Quality of Life. I love this episode. I think this is an underrated episode. I don't know why I didn't put it in my top 10 underrated. Maybe I did, actually. It's a really, really good episode with the exocomps. Peanut Hamper species. Although it's probably not good to bring up Peanut Hamper. But yeah. So I cover this. I think it's quite a good episode. Alright, so final option is Realm of Fear. In contrast, I never really liked this episode. Maybe I would like it better in retrospect, though. Maybe as I got older or whatever, I would appreciate the statement this makes about phobia. I just remember when I first saw it, thinking that it was really boring and didn't really care for it. But yeah, so those are your options for Next Gen. So next we'll go over to DS9, Deep Space Nine, that is, and the first option will be Starship Down. I don't believe I've covered this. This is kind of like Disaster. It's kind of like a disaster film type episode, but in the middle of a Jem'Hadar attack. It's okay. Alright, so next option after that would be When It Rains. Now, this is part of the 10-episode arc that ends the show. It comes right before Tacking Into the Wind, which is the episode I just talked about in my top 25 favorite episodes of the Star Trek franchise. This one kind of sets up Tacking Into the Wind. It sets up the storyline with Worf and Gowron. It steps up the storyline with Kira and working with Damar's resistance cell. So yeah, it's quite a good episode. It's mainly a setup episode, but yeah, could cover that. Next option is Chimera, or Chamara, or however you pronounce it. I always thought this was okay. This is when Odo meets another shapeshifter, but he's not a founder. He's lost. He's just kind of an arrogant prick. I don't know. I never really cared all that much for this episode. Some people really like it. I thought it was okay, but I can cover that if you like. And then after that, The Maquis. Parts 1 and 2. I don't think I covered this episode yet, so I'll cover both parts of The Maquis. I don't like this two-parter as much as other people do. I think it's a bit overrated. I don't really like how they portrayed the Maquis in part 2 as being kind of incompetent. I think that kind of ruined it for me. And it was a bunch of these dinky ships flying around and shooting pot shots at each other, and they made Dukat a bit of an ally, which I always hate that. So, not a huge fan of this, but it was okay. But I just don't like it as much as some other people do. So anyway, next option after that, Favor of the Bold, I have already covered, so that's not an option. The Ascent. I believe I named this as one of the 10 worst episodes of DS9, or at least I once did. I hate this episode with a passion. I love Quark and Odo and their chemistry, don't get me wrong, but they were just annoying as hell in this episode. It was just a very typical, we crashed and we had to try to climb this mountain to get reception. It was just so unoriginal, so boring. I did not like it. So anyway, which again is controversial. A lot of people do like this one, but I don't. So next we come to Voyager. Okay, so first options for Voyager's Barge of the Dead, which I hate this episode. It's funny because it was written by Ronald D. Moore, one of 2 episodes of Voyager that was written by him before he quit. He rage quit. And I don't like it. I don't think it's a good episode, honestly. I think it's a bit silly of her blonde having a vision of going to Grethel or whatever. It's dumb. Anyway, next... Nothing Human. This is a good episode. It's I don't think it's a great episode, but it's very interesting. It has a bit of a moral dilemma, which, of the Doctor using research from a Cardassian who tortured people in order to get that research, and how is that more morally ethical? Is it allowed or not? B'Elanna herself doesn't want him to use it, even though that's the only way she may survive. So it was a very interesting thought experiment. Next is Tattoo. A lot of people hate this episode, and go as far as to call it racist, which it kind of is, but I kind of like it. It's funny because when this episode first came out, I really hated it, but then I came to appreciate what a good character story it was for Chakotay, so I actually kind of like it now. So this would be an interesting one to cover. Did cover that. So next episode is Author. Now this is a beloved episode a lot of people like. I don't really like it that much. My sister hates it, said it was one of the worst episodes of Voyager. I would not go that far. I will say it is an obvious ripoff of Measure of a Man, but it's about the Doctor being arrogant, stuck up, a dick to all of his friends. The Doctor's totally at fault, and the Voyager crew are victims of the Doctor's arrogance. Anyone who tells you otherwise is objectively wrong. So that would be something interesting for me to talk about with this episode. Anyway, next, our final option is Before and After. This is the one where they first mentioned the Krenim, with Kes being very old and traveling backwards in time, where Harry Kim is married to her daughter, and it's weird, and I fucking hate this episode. I do. A lot of people tend to like it, and I just hate it because of the soap opera-y elements of it. Just piss me off. I like the aspect of the Year of Hell and the Krenim, but that's, explored a lot better in the actual episode Year of Hell, not this abomination. Anyway, so those are your options for Voyager. Those would be the ones I shall cover for that episode. So, finally we come to Enterprise, and that's actually on the freaking episode generator now. Before, I would have to go to a random episode generator in order to get it, because they didn't have Enterprise for some reason. Finally do, so you can do Enterprise. Did that one. Alright, first option is Sleeping Dogs from the first season. I will probably be sleeping during this episode because it's boring, but that's very common for Enterprise episodes to be very boring. They go into the Klingon ship, and then Archer is a fucking idiot and acting like a freaking idiot, and he's being an idiot, and they're idiots anyway. Next episode is nope, covered that. Covered that too. Covered that as well. Detained. Alright, another first season episode. I actually kind of like this one. It's not too bad. Very sort of very obvious message episode. They're making comparisons to the Japanese internment camps in the U.S. during World War II, but really, it was obviously an analogy for the backlash against Arab Americans after the aftermath of 9/11. Anyway, it has Al from Quantum Leap is in it, so it's a pretty good episode, actually. One of the better ones of season 1. Nope. Covered that. I don't believe I covered this one. Bound, a terrible, terrible episode with Orion slave girls who entice the crew with their pheromones. Like, yeah, season 4 is typically good, but I don't know what they were thinking with this one. Not a good one. Alright, so next option is Vanishing Point. I don't believe I've covered this one yet. It is one of the worst episodes of Enterprise, in my opinion. It's in the top 10 worst. It's so predictable. It's just so predictable. It just adds nothing new. It's just a cliche, boring Hoshi thinking that she's in this alternate reality where she's disappearing, but really it's all in her head. And it's fucking obvious that it's all in her head from the very beginning. Anyway, final option for Enterprise. Nope, covered that. Will be Civilization. Yeah, it's an episode I was actually, last time I watched it, I liked it a lot better than I thought it would. I thought I would hate this episode and look stupid, but it was actually halfway decent. So I can watch it again, see what I think. Anyway, those are the options for Enterprise. So those are your options for the 5 polls. So be sure to vote in the polls. They will be the links to these will be in the description below. I use the straw poll website, so there'll be one for each of the 5 series. You can go vote in each of the 5, and in several days I will tally up and start recording these videos. So for original series and next gen, you probably only have like 4 days before, because I make these videos well in advance, and so you probably will have around 3 or 4 days to vote. I'm not going to officially close the polls. I'm just going to record my review and you won't even know. So I would vote in those polls soon. DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise, you have longer, especially Enterprise. You probably have like a week or 2 before I actually make those. But so those are that's the deal. Those are the wraps. Go vote in the polls in the description below, and in a month's time I shall be uploading my reviews for the episodes that win the polls. In the meantime, I shall continue to release my coverage of season 3 of Next Generation, and once these polls are done and over with, I will continue on to season 4 of Next Generation and just keep going in order. Anyway, thanks so much for watching my channel, and I'll see you next time.